As I walk from the altar to the pulpit, I hear my feet. Just to let you know, I wear clogs. It's for my back support. And when I was in the Netherlands last year, I bought a pair of Dutch clogs. How appropriate, right? So, but the only thing is they're very noisy, so pardon my bouncing when I walk around. And of course, it's another level toward our worldwide prayer, Catholic prayer. The vestment I wear was from the material brought back from Indonesia, my shoes from Holland, my chalice from Ireland, and we are people gathered in the Lord's name. A lot of questions today, like what ifs kind of questions. And the answer of all the questions, what if, we know is God knows. God knows the answer, whatever it is, whatever question we have. Let's look at the scriptures like an overview, and then we'll go for a direction. The first book is from the Book of Wisdom. It's called Wisdom Literature, sapiential literature, that was composed about 100 years before Christ was born. And it was mainly composed by the authors who were Jewish, living in a Hellenistic world. It was a world of diaspora. So what they were doing was they realized that the pulse of the world was affecting their children. Now think this through, because it's very similar to what's going on today in our own world. That the philosophy and the movements of the day in Greek territory was affecting the thinking and behaviors of the people of faith. Now that's important for us to realize, that the challenge of the world is always there at our doorsteps, always challenging our youth especially to pull away from God. That's why gatherings like this nourish us and keep us close to God, because it renews our faith and it renews our commitment to God through our prayer. So our invitation is always an extension of our hands to those who are young, to those who look like they're not interested. I'm so happy every time we come here, the families that come here, and the earlier Mass, the children that were next door with Lisa, learning from the Scriptures, learning their lessons. It's so important. It's a challenge that was faced by our communities, the Israelites, well before Jesus came on the scene. And it's still a challenge in our society today. So parents and older brothers and sisters, it's your job to share your faith. And I'm sorry, no, don't push it down the throats of your kids. Share it. And the best teacher is example. What you do, they follow. Okay, so that's the foundation of the Book of Wisdom. And then we're going to run to Jesus, who talks about using your common sense, using your wisdom, and he gives this example of being prepared to meet God when he comes. Okay, he gives the story as a parable of 5 wise and 5 stupid, unwise people, women, who were the ladies in waiting for the groom. Literally, they were waiting for the groom, and the process was the family of the groom would come and they would meet the family of the bride, and then the festivities would begin. It's an ancient custom. But those who were waiting for the groom, as you heard, had lamps, but their oil ran out. We don't use oil lamps much, but they're sort of coming back in like a traditional atmosphere in homes. And the oil ran out. Forget the oil, forget the lamps. Think about our faith. It could be a symbol of that oil. Their faith ran out because they got tired of waiting for God as they expected God to be. Yes, we call it the bridegroom, but that's a parable. Jesus is telling us this parable to get us ready to live our lives every day. Live our lives in a practical way. Go back to the first reading. Using our brains, using our faith to live in the world. And when our faith runs out, we're in trouble. When our faith runs out and we give over to secularity or the ways of the politics of the day or the historical movements that we're involved in, and faith diminishes, well, we're getting ready for our relationship with God And Jesus says, could you imagine going to the doors of the nether world, doors of heaven, and Jesus saying to any of us, I don't know you. No, your faith ran out, and you never renewed it. So I don't know you. Now, that's a parable. God forbid it ever happens, but it's a parable that can give us some thought. This is the month of November. How appropriate for us to put our hands in God's hands, to put us in the presence of God, who knows everything. He knows the destination of every person, doesn't control it, allows you and me to make our own not rules, but follow our own consciences, to follow our conscience to get closer to Him and to absorb our faith. Again, another example to give our children. Because God is watching us, and He's expecting us to pass down a wholesome faith to those who are our family members. And when we don't do that, we give bad example. So, Paul's letter to the Thessalonians was preparing people who were kind of disappointed because they were ready for what we call the imminent return of Jesus. Jesus was going to return in their day. Well, think of it. So many of our prayers are on our schedule. God, I want you to answer my prayer right now. And what happens, and what was the movie I was watching just last night? I can't think of it. It was a really great movie, but there was one scene, it was about Mother Cabrini. Of course, how did I forget? It was the life of Mother Cabrini, our patron for the church. And there was one scene in which a woman's, this is Little Italy in the early century, maybe early 1900s, her son was stabbed. And Mother Cabrini got word at the convent that this woman's son was stabbed. Now, this woman had already lacked faith, okay? Her daughter was very involved with Mother Cabrini's ministry, but she wasn't. So Mother Cabrini went to the hospital. How typical of a good missionary. She goes to the hospital, consoles the woman, and she says to the woman says to her, I don't know what's going on, how my son is. They won't give me any information. Now, just imagine, there was a language barrier. You know that. She was speaking Italian to American-speaking doctors, and because she couldn't speak English, she was ignored. Be careful of that, because that's still going on in our society today. Be careful of that. Because someone doesn't speak your or my tongue doesn't mean they have to be ignored, doesn't mean they're less than. It means they're speaking a different language. But God understands everybody's language. So to the best of our ability, we have to work with God and imitate God. So she goes to the woman, and she said, I'll go check. She goes, and she checks with the doctor. She comes back with bad news that the son had died. Who did that woman blame? God and Mother Cabrini. You did nothing for me. Your prayers mean nothing. Get out of my life. Leave me alone. You see what happens? And that's an example of early 20th century missing God. Acknowledging the fact that we want God on our time to do what we want, when we want it. It doesn't happen that way, folks. We know that. We all know that. And our faith brings us here to deepen our wisdom of understanding God in my life. And the book of wisdom is portrayed as personification, as a woman. She, it's referred to. And the book of wisdom is telling us how to really accept this gift from God who knows all things. She's readily perceived by those who love her. In other words, if we love the wisdom of God in our lives, if we understand God's role in our lives, and it's His way, not my way, the love I have for God comes to the forefront. The love I have for God's wisdom is found in me. It means trust. It means prayer. And it continues. The metaphors continue as the personification of a woman as wisdom. If you seek her, you'll always find her. And if you wait for her, she answers you. Now, wisdom and God's grace doesn't necessarily operate on our schedule, by the way. So if we wait for God's wisdom to hit us, and we can call it the wisdom of God, you can call it the love of God, the presence of God in my life, if we wait for that to hit us until we get our will done, it's not a prayer, it's a wish. Jesus told us how to pray with the Lord's Prayer, and you'll hear it again today as we all say it nice and loudly, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Your will be done. God knows how we pray. God reads our hearts. He knows everything. He knows the direction of our country. He knows the direction of our families. And although it's not predestined, because it's in our hands by our will, God knows how you will choose. God knows how, if you're addicted, how you will choose to refrain from your addiction, whatever it is, alcohol, liquor, sex, money, it doesn't matter. God knows. So if we work closely with God, it will be His will that gets done in our lives. And here on earth, we'll be mirroring the will of God in heaven. It works so well. And who's the best example of that? Is Jesus Christ. His whole life was doing God's will. Was everyone accepted? Was he accepted by everyone? No. They spit on him. They stripped him naked. We always have such beautiful crucifixes in our churches, but it was nothing like that. It was a disgusting death. This is the Son of God who said, I'm living because God knows everything, and I've trusted myself to God, and I'm giving myself to God 100%. And to those who are persecuting him at the foot of the cross, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. And he didn't continue this, but he could definitely have continued by saying, but you do know what I'm doing and know what they're doing. We're here today to renew our faith. The political thing is going on for a while. The COVID thing has been going on for a while. Our family interactions, good and bad, will keep going on. Place ourselves in the presence of God. Your will be done. You know everything. Help me to act in this world with prudence, with conscience, with faith. And you can't go wrong. Because whatever comes down the pike, whether it's that man who was killed in the highway or not, God's will be done. We pray he rest in peace. Does it hurt? Yes, death hurts. The family, those who remain. That's why Paul says, don't get caught up that God is going to return and you're going to miss him. No. And all the beautiful imagery that we have in the concept of rapture comes from this kind of a reading from Paul, that we're going to go up to meet God in the clouds. Well, Paul was trying to describe visually what will happen spiritually. We're all going to go out to meet God, those who died before us, those who die after us, because we don't know when he's going to return. He does, but we don't know when he's going to return. So live as if he's alive with us. And Paul concludes, console one another with these words. We will always be with the Lord if we choose.